Okay, I'm recording this video to go through your corrections with you on this experiment. Now, before we start the experiment, I would like you to copy the following steps in your exercise book. Now, before we continue, I would like you to copy these important tips for practical in your exercise book. First, you must learn to reach each step slowly. Underline important points for each step and record till you reread each step till you understand. Follow each step closely and carry out the experiment. When plotting the graph, always draw a best fit line or best fit curve. Follow instruction and give your answer accordingly, else your answer in the data should be in 1 decimal place and the final answer of each question should be in 3 significant figures. When a practical exam asks you about the source of error, usually it refers to the error which you cannot avoid during the experiment. Then you have to make improvements to the setup of the experiment to minimize the error. Now I assume that you have finished reading the steps slowly and closely. I would like you to make a habit. Like for example, important things like this, I circle. Place the cross wire and a lens holder behind the ruler so they touch it. So I underline to remind myself. Place the cross wire at 0 cm position. And this must not be moved. So I have to remind myself by circle it like that. If not, I make mistake on this, my answer will not be accurate. Now, if you have read it carefully, you realize that there's something called UA1 and UB1. Then there's something called UA2, UB2. Now, you have to highlight and remind yourself. It says repeat instruction 2 to 6. Record this distance to nearest point 1 in the columns A and 2. So basically, what is UA 2 and B is you repeat this step again at the same position to get the second reading. That's the meaning of difference between first set of reading and second set of reading. Next, over here it says that the average distance, you have to give your answer in 0.1 cm. So again, you have to highlight it or underline or circle it to remind yourself. And make sure that you give the answer, your UA and UB, to nearest 0.1 cm. Your average values has to be in 0.001 meter. And when you calculate, they want you to be in 2 decimal place. All this you must indicate and highlight and remind yourself. If not, marks will be penalized. Now this is the data that I have collected. I've collected only one set of data. For your case, you should repeat each set of setup twice. That's why I get UA1, UAB. So this is my setup. According to the paper, the instruction, all my setup has to be leaning against the ruler. So I must remind myself and keep reading the instructions and to remind myself according to what they requested. So it has to be against the ruler like that. Okay, then the first reading requires me to do UA to obtain UA1 and UB1. So I may forget along the way what is UA1, UB1, and I will always go back to the diagram. Make it a habit, always go back to the diagram and take a look. So UA is from the torch lamp to the lens, where you get the sharpest image. So I will adjust this till I get my sharp image on the screen. If you don't see anything, you have to adjust accordingly. So this is my sharpest image that I can get. Correct? So this distance, take note, is the distance. You must be very careful. Are they asking you for the reading or distance? It's the distance. So what is the distance from here, the starting point, to this marking. So mine is about 11.1. So I write 11.1. UB, what is UB? Many of you came to me and asked, Mrs. Tan, what is UB? Please always refer to the diagram and see what is UB. UB is from here to your next position where you get the sharp image. So I adjust till I get the second sharpest image. To that, see? And that will be from here to here will be my UB. And I will write the answer accordingly. Now, what is UB2? UA2 and UB2, if you look at the instruction number 6 here, it says repeat the step. So you're supposed to repeat the step to get your second reading. To save time for myself, what I did is I only do one set. But your answer, you should have all the second sets of reading. That means for each point, you repeat twice. One set, then second set. Over here requires you to take the average. What is average? It's this plus this divided by 2 when you answer. Over here requires you to convert the answer in meter. So I divide by 100. Why divide? Because cn is smaller. Divide by 100 will get this. And finally, this is 1 over your answer for this. So this is what I get. Now, remember this is here 0.1 cm average. So my average has to be in 0.1 decimal place, nearest 0.1. Here, they want me to get nearest 3 decimal place. So my answer in here in 2 decimal places. So my answer is in 2 decimal places. So my mistake, I have to write down all in 2 decimal places. So I will not lose my mind for that. Okay, there's something that I want you to take note. In the O-level exam, if you happen to see that the graph paper, they have written the numbers there by right, okay, by right, you shouldn't change the points. However, I've already found out with the HOD and the teachers who have taught 2015, they realized that in the examination, they realized there's a mistake on the points. So, only for this practice, you are allowed to change the points accordingly. I repeat, during exam, do not change the points unless the examiner tells you that there's a mistake and change accordingly. Okay, so for this case, 2015, that year happened that there's a mistake in the points. Therefore, we are allowed to change the points on the axis accordingly. So, if you plot your points that you have obtained here, your graph best fit line should look something like this. Okay, so based on your line, let's answer the question. Now, this question says from your graph, read and record 0.01, the values of this, the intercepted point where the graph line crosses the y-axis. When I first read this sentence, I'm also confused, don't know what they want. Then what I did is I circled the key point. First, they want your answer to be in 2 decimal places, 0.01 place. So I better write this down to remind me. Please pick up the habit like me. Next, they want the lines to crosses the y-axis. So I go to my line, I extend the line till it hits the y-axis. And they ask, what is the point here? The point that intersects the y-axis, and my answer is 9.2 according to what I have here. No, it's not 9.2, it's coming near to 1.2, 9.15. So my answer is 9.15. See that? Next, determine the gradient of your line. By now, you should know how to find gradient. So I go back to my graph, I take 2 points. Rise is this minus this, my answer. Run, this minus this, my answer. And from here, I calculate my gradient, rise over run. Over here, again, Read the question carefully. Use the magnitude. Magnitude means value of the gradient and the formula given below to find your focal length. So basically what I do is, what's my gradient from here, my value from here, and calculate, and this is my answer. Again, remember, answer 3 significant figures. Okay, now over here it says draw a ray diagram to show the formation of the image in part B, part 1. The focal points of the lens are marked labeled with F. This diagram is not drawn to scale. Now, remember how to draw the light ray comes to the lens, hit the center, and it must hit the focal point and come here. Similarly, here, light rays hit the lens and it must passes through the focal point and comes here. Okay, and this is where your image is. Make sure you use ruler to draw the light rays. Say I made a mistake here, I should have used ruler. So use a ruler to draw your light rays. Now for this question, identify one possible source of error. Remember in our notes we mentioned the source of error. Suggest an improvement to reduce this error. It's a 1-mark question. Now for source of error, what I can only tell you that the source of error refers to the error which you cannot avoid during experiment. Something that when you set up this experiment, that it will cause inaccuracy to the experiment. Now, to answer this kind of question, usually you go back to your setup and take a look. What is the problem here? What is the possible problem that you have here that may not give you accurate results? Now, if you follow the instruction carefully, all this should be here. At times, you realize that you say, what other possible error that you may have? Now, what I can think is, when you're adjusting the lens, I may accidentally tilt it like that. And when that happens, you realize that your result is not accurate. Right? So I always have to make sure that, you see, my setup is always in parallel. So I think back, when I'm doing the experiment, what has happened that make it become an error to the experiment? So back to the question. So one of the possible error that I can realize is the lens is not in parallel with the screen. Okay, when that happens, it becomes an error. So when the lens is not in parallel with the screen, this may get tilted and it may become an error. The light doesn't shine through right to the center of the lens and you cannot get sharp images. You see the screen, when I tilt it a little bit, it's not sharp, but if I straighten it when it's in parallel, the image is sharpened. So I can say this, that it is a possible source of error. And how to improve it? Then I ask myself, if this is a problem, how do I rectify it? How do I make adjustment to the setup to improve it? So one possible thing is use a set square instead of just a ruler to make sure that the lens and screen are parallel to avoid distortion of the image. So it is not easy to answer source of error kind of question, but always ask yourself. Okay? Ask yourself this question. Write this down on your paper or in your exercise book. What is the possible cause that affects the accuracy of results? So if you keep asking yourself this question, what is the possible cause that affects the accuracy of results. From there, if you are able to answer this question, okay, by looking at the setup again, you are able to find the answer for this source of error question. Okay, that's the end for this. Please complete your correction and make sure you have copied all these things in your exercise book and submit your experiment worksheet to your teacher the next lesson.